This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. How we doing? The lottery is done. The special ticket came back Paige Bueckers. Now we got to decide, does Curt Miller know what to do? That's right. Does Curt Miller know what to do? And the reason I asked that question is Curt Miller know what to do? Curt Miller was the actual head coach of the Los Angeles Sparks. He was fired from that job, right? And now you got him back in the hot seat. And of course, Curt Miller, the question is, do you know what to do? Do you know what kind of coach to hire? Because I'll put it out to you, and I'm going to make this real easy and simple for everybody. Curt Miller, you need to hire a man. You need to hire a male coach. Okay, you need to get that out of the way. And this is not about you. Okay, and one of the things that Curt Miller did when he left L.A. Sparks that I wasn't a fan of what he did. He openly expressed how he was a gay male coach. Nobody really cares, right? Because I mean, inclusiveness is here; it's done. Let's get past that, and let's get on to the game of basketball, right? Because now you're in a bigger hot seat, and I can tell you this, folks. I seen the dance. I see the movement in the WNBA, and I seen a general manager and a head coach and a president get fired, right? And you don't want Curt Miller, you don't want that. But if you dance around this thing and act like it's what your importance is, I'll tell you what, you're gonna be better off handing giving Bueckers a male coach. Because here's the deal: Gino's a man, right? Gino's a man, right? And these are his daughters. I always tell you about the father figures, right? Well, this is a real father figure here. I mean, you're talking about a legacy of young women that he has produced each and every day, and he's hard on them. There ain't nobody hard on him. I mean, Gino's Gino, right? I mean, even over the years, the assistant coaches would just have to take vacations, right? Because Gino presses the wire. He presses the wire and he goes deep down in it. But what does he produce? Champions, right? And when you produce champions, now you got all the weight on the line because now you're talking about bringing in somebody that's a big timer, right? And you got to look at Bueckers, right? Bueckers is not, like I told you guys, Mount Rushmore. Well, this one's going to cause more heat than Caitlin. I could really tell you that right now because the presence of UConn basketball is bigger than the presence of Iowa basketball. Okay. And you got them all across the board. You got them broadcasting. And this is not the time to play around because here's what's going to happen. If Curt Miller can't get this right, he's going to get fired. It's going to be a one and done, right? Because he already showed us you couldn't handle Rickea Jackson. Okay, you couldn't handle that LA squad, but now you're going to come back over here, and however it happened, I mean, I'm not used to it, but the WMA did. I've never seen coaches get fired and get promoted, right? But in this league, that happens. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. But you're talking about a different person. You're talking about a daughter of Gino. Okay, you're talking about a man that's a champion, and you're talking about somebody that's not going to allow you to play with their daughter, right? Because at the end of the day, this is prized possession here, folks. This is prized possession. And if you want to be smart enough and not recognize what this young lady means, and for all you coaches out there, every year you'll see coaches come in, and one thing I'll tell you about coaches that I've kind of understood and know. Every team that wins is not their most enjoyable team. Sometimes coaches have losing teams, but the team had so much synergy, so much fun to be around that it made the coaching enjoyable. Okay, and that's what Paige Bueckers has done, right? I mean, she's battled back from injury. Okay, he's watched her do the work. She's got back in and she's playing basketball again. And potentially she could go to Dallas. That could change, right? That could change. Because sometimes, folks, it's like Deion Sanders, right? You got to fall back sometime to find the right situation. And now the question is this, because we don't want the Lisa Bluters, Christie Sides show again. The question is Curt Miller smart enough to coach Paige Bueckers, right? I mean, because Curt has this way about himself where he thinks he's the most intelligent guy in the room, okay? And that's kind of what coaches should feel because you should be narcissistic as a coach, right? You got to have that in your bloodline. But as a general manager, you're kind of the overseer. You're not the coach. Okay, so now it's come down to selection. Okay, I got the first pick in the lottery. What do we do? Are we going to do the Christie Sides way? Okay, because if you go out there and make the wrong decision right now, you're going to get fired, Kurt Miller. I can tell you that right now because the power of UConn women's basketball is bigger than you've ever dealt with in a lifetime, right? It's bigger. So what I suggest, I can make it really easy on Miller. You're going to hire a coach, and you better get one of those UConn alumni coaches to be there. Because one thing I tell you about Gino, he's going to need a direct line. Okay, Gino's one of those coaches, and you got to understand something about Gino. I mean, he's a different character, right? He does things differently, but Gino, look at all his daughters, right? Look at all his daughters. That's what I'm saying. He's like a daughter, right? He's a father figure, right? And he's a strong one too. He don't believe in no tears. He don't believe in no emotion. You get out there, you do what you got to do. You do it now. Let's do it right. Okay, let's get it right, right? So you got to look at it. And who won the WNBA championship last year? One of his players, right? So you got to put it all in perspective and don't blow this, because at the end of the day, folks, I can tell you this, and here's where you're going to know, and here's where he's going to know. Okay, if you don't get this right, then when it's time for UConn Gino to walk in, and he's going to walk in, and the owner of the Dallas is going to be meeting with him, right? Because they're going to have a meeting, right? And I don't know why people would ever think you're going to draft an All-American, okay, preseason All-American. And there's some great players coming in. There's about 4 or 5 of them. But at the same time, and think you are now running the show. It would have been different if you had 7 NBA championships under your belt, Kurt Miller, but you don't. So now we got a player coming out of a higher level of coaching. I told you about the high-profile coaches, right? Because what did Christie Sides have to do? And it cost her the job. What did Linda? It cost him the job going behind high-profile coaches, right? So what is he facing now? Okay, you got Gino, but what did Christie Sides face? Right? You weren't just facing Gino. You got to look at how this all worked itself out. Because when you get somebody, Caitlin Clark, coming in, right? And now you got to face Lisa Bluter, right? And I said, well, Christie Sides is going to be hard on her because the Indiana Fever drafted 3 players, right? So here's a scenario, folks. I really want you to follow this because this is the real deal and how it really works. Okay, and if you can't coach them high profile, then really you could really screw this up really bad. You got a situation where number 2, Nalissa Smith, that's Kim Mulkey, right? You see what Kim Mulkey's doing out there. There's no doubt about that, right? So you got that going. Then you go over there and you come back again and you get the number 1 pick, right? And you got South Carolina. So now you got to follow Don Staley. Okay, and this is where Christie Sides fell short. There's no way she could reach this level of coaching. Then you get to the next end, they take Caitlin Clark, and you got Lisa Bluter. So you got 3 coaches who are better than Christie Sides, but you got the coach trying to coach them. I mean, it doesn't make sense because it'll take the player about 30 seconds to realize you have no idea what you're talking about. And you know what? You got a competitor here, right? You got to understand, Bueckers is a competitor. Okay, and this is what you got to be cautious of because you got players who come from programs that maybe lose 3 to 5, 6 games in their entire career, and then they come over with you, and you immediately go on this losing streak, right? And that's kind of what happened with Caitlin. They go 0-8, and she lost Christie Sides. She's like, you know what? Whatever you're talking about, I have no idea because it's not working, and you don't want to get in a confrontation. Because here's where you got to keep your mouth closed, right? It's where the organization, coaches, everything. You don't want to come out and say Paige Bueckers got bad habits. You don't want to do that. You don't want to start talking about what they need to learn because they've already overlearned. Paige Bueckers will be smarter than the coach you hire unless you go out there and get an NBA coach, right? I mean, you got to face it because for Gino, and Gino's different with the coaching, man. I'm telling you, man. I mean, Gino's into some psychological, uh, type of coaching. I mean, if he would have left UConn, you got to look at the jobs. You got to look at the jobs that he would have took, right? I mean, because he's not going to just take any job, right? If he left UConn, but I mean, he'd probably be wanting to coach somewhere and say, okay, what do I want to coach? Well, I want to coach at Duke. I want to coach at North Carolina, right? Because if Gino if he hadn't waited all these years and done it again, but he won so much he couldn't stop, right? But I mean, Gino's a male coach. I mean, he can coach men, right? I mean, but there's something I'll tell everybody because I had a chance to spirit. There's something about joy of coaching women's basketball. Now, the biggest joy I ever had coaching women's basketball is because you take all the leaping and everything, because men, they make a lot of mistakes on the court, but they can cover it up with the athletic ability, right? They could lose the ball, get out of offense, pop a jumper, dribble drive penetration, come up with a crazy wild shot that goes in. Women can't do that. It's just kind of everything is below the rim, so it equals everything out. But this one here is a strong, strong, strong superstar, right? Superstar. I mean, you count on you count the amount of games she has lost being at UConn. That's a taste that she doesn't want to have, right? So it's a tough one because you got Kurt Miller. Like I said, couldn't handle. He went over there, and this one got me. You can't coach up Rickea Jackson. You know what Rickea Jackson is to me? Rickea Jackson is 25 points a night, going to come in and get you anywhere from 7 to 10 rebounds and get you 10 assists. That's a triple double walking, right? But it couldn't get done. Now he's out. They were done with it, and it may be a blessing in disguise because they really got the second pick, but maybe he had the leprechaun rabbit split in his pocket. But nevertheless, Kurt Miller's got to figure this out because at the end of the day, and you know me, Money Mike's just going to hit between the eyes. I kind of want to just drill down the topic. You know what? Miller needs to select a male coach. And also, Miller, you made that announcement when you left the Fever, how much it graciously was to be open and be a gay coach. Well, let's get past that. Let's get to the game of basketball. Because if we keep bringing that up, then you ain't here for the game of basketball, right? You're here for something else. And I don't want to see a player like Paige Bueckers, okay, get out there and have problems when she's ready to win a championship. Now, you got some stars up there. So we're going to figure out who this is going to be. And, folks, this is how it happens in the WNBA. You guys know what it is. You get the lottery pick, but you don't have a coach. So it tells us that the coach has no bearing. The organization's going to pick who they want to pick. Will it be Paige Bueckers? Yeah, that's a possibility. But is there some other talent out there? I got my eye on Kiki. I think Kiki is phenomenal. But Paige Bueckers, man, oh, man, let me tell you something about Paige. This is the most efficient player I ever seen in the game of basketball. She premeditates every move, knows what steps she's going to take, and man, oh man, she never goes around the rose garden. She'll take the shortest path necessary. But Gino's Gino, and I'm telling you, don't want Gino walking in your building because he ain't got no love for you, Kurt. Ain't going to be no friendship. I've won more games than you ever thought, and if you think you can win more games than me, you better wake up from the dream because that ain't happening. There ain't no level, ain't no comparison between Gino and Kurt Miller's coaching because Gino has put them all in there. In fact, Gino could start his own league with all UConn players. It is what it is. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. What am I saying? Kurt Miller, don't screw it up. You got it. The Angels have fell down on you. Paige Bueckers, generational talent, and the battle of Mount Rushmore begins. You know what it is. You got Paige Bueckers. That's right. You got CaitlincLark. Boy, they getting it in. And then you got Juju. My man, I got a feeling Kiki's going to rise up to the top. USC basketball. All things are possible to those who believe. And this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We'll see you soon.